Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is part 3 of the chapter 3 of ISCA, CA Final ISCA syllabus. In this video, which is part 3A, we will be looking at the classification of controls based on the objective of the controls, which is the first tab here. And in part 3B, we will be looking at classification based on the nature of resources. And part 3C we will be looking at classification of controls based on audit functions. This is part 3A and we will discuss the classification of controls on the basis of control objectives. On the basis of objective of controls, we have 4 types of controls. First one is preventive, the next is detective, third one is corrective controls, and the fourth one, which is not related to all these 3, that is compensating controls. First thing which we look at is preventive controls. Preventive controls are those controls which are put in order to prevent errors from occurring or in order to prevent something wrongful from happening. And the best example for that would be in case we are filling any forms or something like that. If we type a number in the name field, it will throw up an error. It will not accept the form because names of people are usually only containing alphabets and not numbers. Therefore, it will throw up an error. This is a validation rule which has been built into those forms. In the same manner, they have given certain examples here as well. Restriction of unauthorized entry into the premises. For that, there could be manual controls or there could be computerized controls such as access card and biometrics and such things. The next one is restricted unauthorized entry into the software application. The manual control would be to prevent the person from accessing the computer system in a physical manner. And computer controls would be access controls like password, username and things like that. So these are examples of preventive controls. Now we'll go to the characteristics of the preventive controls. There are 3 characteristics of preventive controls which we'll have to look at. The first one is the preventive control should understand what are the vulnerabilities or the weaknesses in that particular system or asset. And for those weaknesses, it should analyze what are the threats that can be there for that system, or what is the possible threat which can attack that vulnerability, which can attack the system by exploiting that vulnerability. Based on the weakness and the threat perception, necessary controls will be put in place in order to prevent these things from happening. The next control is a detective control. In case an error cannot be prevented, in such a case, the next barrier or defense would be that of detective controls. These controls will detect any error that has already happened. And the best example for this would be a BRS, a bank reconciliation statement. In a bank reconciliation statement, it will be prepared at the end of the period. It could be end of the day or end of the week or end of the month, depending on whatever the organization follows. So this is something like a post-mortem analysis. We will analyze the difference between the entries as per the bank books versus the entries that are made in the organization's books. Based on this, we will be able to detect any siphoning off or any incorrect transaction that has happened during this period. For detective controls, the characteristics are: first thing, it should understand what is lawful activity and what is unlawful. The next one is, if it identifies any unlawful activity, it should be able to report that to an appropriate person or appropriate group. Third one is an interaction with the preventive controls in order to minimize the chances of such errors from happening. The last one is surprise checks by the supervisor of the system to check whether the system is working properly and whether the detective controls are doing their job. And if detective controls detect any errors, their job ends there. They do not go ahead to correct the issue that has happened. They only detect that there has been an issue that has happened. The job of corrective controls would be to correct the errors that have been detected. And the characteristics of corrective controls are, we have to renumber the points there. It is 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6. This is the order. This is more logical and can be remembered easily. First thing is to minimize the impact of the threat. So once a threat has penetrated into the system, the first thing that should be done is to minimize the impact that it is causing. And then after that, providing remedy to the problems that have been discovered. Detective controls will detect that there is an issue. Corrective control should immediately provide some standby remedy so that the impact is minimized and it is not going much deeper. Third one would be to correct the error that is arising from that problem. Once a temporary remedy is provided, the next thing is to put in a proper fix for that issue that has happened. Fourth one is to identify the root cause of the problem. Fifth is getting feedback from preventive and detective controls. That is, why has this error actually happened? The last one is modifying the systems to minimize future occurrences of these incidents. So this is a more logical order and you can remember all the points easily. And another control which is apart from these three types of controls is a compensating control. And the logic behind this is the cost of the lock which we put should not be more than the cost of the asset that we need to protect. In case there is nothing in your home, you just have an empty home, then you don't even have to put in an expensive lock to that home. You just can lock it with the regular door lock and leave it, because there is nothing inside the home to protect it. In the same way, the cost of the control which we are putting should be relevant to whatever we are seeking to protect. If what we are seeking to protect does not have value, then it does not make sense to put in an expensive control. And when determining what kind of controls should be put in the organization, managements will take this call based on what is more important to them. For those type of important things, controls would be put in place, and for things which are not so important, they will try to leverage the existing controls and not add any new controls. And that is what is called compensating controls. There is no control which is specific to that particular risk, but some other control which is there put in for some other risk, that control will also mitigate this particular risk for which no control was made. For example, there are two risks, A and B. A is a more important risk and a control has to be put in for that. And B is something which is complementary and which is not so important. The control which is put in for risk A will also take care of risk B to a large extent, and that is what is called as compensating control. There is no specific control, but something else is compensating for that particular risk, and that is what they have spoken about there. And with that, we come to an end of the classification of controls based on the objectives. In the next part, we will be looking at the classification based on nature of the resources. Thank you for watching and hope you also watch the next set of videos as well. Thanks.